Hello, Namaskar, Ram Ram, Pranam. Thank you for joining me today on this new episode of Being the Change. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the healing process, healing after tragedy, or I can say healing after any traumatic experience, healing after trauma. If I talk about our Indian society, particularly in so-called middle class society in India, we tend to ignore this topic. We do not want to talk about the healing process. Actually, we do not even believe that कि ऐसा भी कोई process होता है, right? And particularly so in case of a boy or a male person, उसको तो allowed ही नहीं होता है. Trauma, tragic experience क्या होता है? Nothing. We think so. We believe so. It's not allowed in our society to talk about that. But it's wrong. It's not fine. Mental issue, स्ट्रेस, ट्रोमेटिक एक्सपीरियंस, ट्रेजेडी किसी के साथ भी हो सकती है. मेल, फीमेल, बच्चा, छोटा, बड़ा, बूढ़ा, इट डजंट मैटर, राइट? सो टुडे आई विल टॉक अबाउट दिस. जस्ट नाउ आई मेंशन दैट ये किसी के साथ भी हो सकता है. एट द सेम टाइम हो सकता है ये बचपन से हुआ हो या अभी रिसेंट में. लेट्स टॉक अबाउट द चाइल्डहुड ट्रॉमा. वी कैन से लाइक लॉन्ग हिस्ट्री ऑफ child abuse, sexual abuse, or physical abuse, mental abuse, right? And if I talk about the more recent one, recent car accident, or breakup, or ending of a marriage, getting divorced, or going through the financial crisis, facing huge financial loss in a very short span of time. Obviously, it can lead to traumatic experience, or it can lead to a disaster, even in more negative manner. Or at the highest level, I can say that death of any loved one. If you have lost any of your loved one, you might agree with me. So today I will talk about the healing process. If you are going through any of these issues, any of these experiences, or any person related to you who is going through or any of these issues, so that you can help him by the themes or things which I will mention today in this video. But before moving forward, I just want to share one thing with you, that how can I share anything with you, or how I am going to share this particular process with you, and why I am doing this. The most important question, why? Actually, I can tell you with assurance that the following things or the points which I will be mentioning or will be sharing with you guys to recover from any tragic or traumatic experience in your life, I have all applied in my life personally. I have applied all these principles in my life personal level, because obviously tragic trauma किसी के साथ भी हो सकता है. So I also faced all these things, and very quickly and briefly I'll try to mention these things जो मैंने face किया, so that you can connect with me on an emotional and mental level, so that while dealing with the explaining part or the healing process, you can feel those things. So it actually all started with the loss of my grandfather. I lost him. But when he was at his deathbed, I can say, in hospital, in ICU, in his last days, I was in my office at that time, and I got a call from my home. My mom told me that आज घर आना है, 4 दिन से दादाजी एडमिट हैं हॉस्पिटल में. I was shocked. ऑब्वियसली 4 दिन से एडमिट और मुझे आज बताया जा रहा है. आई वाज शॉक्ड, बट आई डिडंट रिएक्ट मच. So just after office, I directly, without even changing my clothes and all that, just directly went to the hospital where he was admitted. When I went there, I stayed for the whole night there. And at dinner time, somewhere around 8 or 9 p.m., that nurse came to me and gave me some food so that I can feed my grandfather. When I took that food or that thali near to my grandfather, I saw him and I couldn't react for a moment. I assume you might have seen that वो सब नाली वाली and all that, वो सब मुंह से इधर उधर ये मैं नहीं देख पाया. बट somehow मैंने ट्राई किया उनको खाना खिलाने का. उसमें कुछ दाल था, दलिया टाइप कुछ था, एक दो पतली पतली वो चपाती टाइप थी, थोड़ा सा ये सब. सो आई ट्राइड छोटा सा एक बाइट लिया. आई ट्राई टू मैश दैट इन completely soak that in dal so that it became completely soft, and little by little, जैसे किसी चिड़िया के बच्चे को हम खिलाते हैं, बिल्कुल छोटे बच्चे को खिलाते हैं, लाइक दैट आई ट्राई टू फीड हिम. और ऐसे ऐसे करके he ate around 1.5 chapati, and after 15-20 minutes that nurse came to me and he asked me, भैया आप इनके क्या लगते हैं? I said he is my दादाजी. She said, भैया प्लीज जब तक दादाजी आए ना, बाबा यहाँ आए ना, डेली आप आना इधर. I said why? बोले 4 दिन से दादाजी इधर एडमिट हैं, आपके बाबा इधर एडमिट हैं, और 4 दिन में इन्होंने पहली बार कोई निवाला अपने मुंह में लिया है. बिकॉज जो इनका पाइप अंदर गया हुआ है और जो इनका अंदर जो भी दिक्कत हो रखी है, अंदर से सब फटा हुआ है, इतना छाले टाइप हो रखे हैं, वो कुछ पी भी नहीं सकते हैं. बट जस्ट बिकॉज यू आर हेयर, इन्होंने ट्राई किया है, इन्होंने खाना खाया है. I got little moisture in my eyes at that time. And I recall the moment when I was feeding him, when I was feeding my grandfather. A few little drops rolled down his cheeks. उनकी आंखें नम थी जब मैं उन्हें खाना खिला रहा था. And when I was done, after 1.5 chapati, उन्होंने मुश्किल से अपना हाथ उठाया और ऐसे मेरे सर पे रखा एंड इशारा किया कि और नहीं खा सकता. एंड सो फॉर द होल नाइट आई वाज सिटिंग देयर, एंड आफ्टर फ्यू डेज वो डॉक्टर ने बोल दिया टाइम इज ओवर एंड यू कैन टेक हिम होम फॉर द लास्ट फ्यू डेज, जब तक भगवान ने चाहा. सो फॉर द लास्ट फ्यू डेज ही वाज एट होम, बट फाइनली ही लेफ्ट. सो while I was recovering through all of this, after some time, I realized and I recalled a moment with my grandfather. Before all this happened, actually 6 or 5 months before that incident, we were sitting together. How I was showing him my second novel with proud. कि दादाजी देखो, फर्स्ट नॉवल के बाद सेकंड नॉवल पे पब्लिश हो गई. आई एम एन एस्टेब्लिश्ड ऑथर राइट नाउ. बेस्ट सेलर नहीं, बट वन डे आई विल बी, मे बी. और आई प्रॉमिस यू, सेकंड नॉवल से जो मेरा फर्स्ट रॉयल्टी चेक आएगा ना, और थोड़ा सा अपनी तरफ से, थोड़ा सा अपनी सैलरी से थोड़ा पैसा जोड़ के ना, नेक्स्ट ईयर अराउंड होली आई विल डेफिनेटली टेक यू टू केदारनाथ, बद्रीनाथ और चार धाम, wherever you say, I will take you personally. I asked him, आप गए हैं कभी? He said no. बेटा कभी कोई लेके नहीं गया और मेरे पास इतना टाइम नहीं रहा. I was serving in the Indian Army. So I promised him, ठीक है दादाजी, just give me 6 or 8 months and we will go together. He said, ठीक है बेटा, देखेंगे. And just 1 or 1.5 months before Holi, he went. I couldn't comprehend the situation. I didn't know how to react, what to say to myself. एक छोटी सी promise जो किया था वो भी पूरा नहीं कर पाया. And in those last moments, सिर्फ एक छोटा सा निवाला खिलाते हुए रो दिया मैं उनको, वो भी रो दिए. खैर, cutting the story short, moving to the next part. After all the rituals and all that, some period, after taking some break, I got married. Because दादा के एक्सपायर होने से पहले शादी फिक्स हो चुका था. But just because ये सब हुआ तो we got delayed by a few months or almost 1 year actually. So finally I got married. And just after 10 or 11 days of marriage, I got to know that my father-in-law is suffering from cancer, liver cancer. My wife was pursuing her master's degree in, she was doing MD in pediatrics, child specialist. So उनको वापस बुलाया, and just when she came back from her college, from her hostel, after 1 or 2 weeks, lockdown was announced due to the breakdown of COVID. So during all that lockdown thing and all that, पापा को कभी इधर लेके गए, कभी उधर लेके गए. We did everything we could do. We tried our level best. But at the end, after 6, 7, 8 months, we lost him. And one thing I want to tell, that for my wife, he was the only. She had already lost her mother when she was a kid. She had already lost her brother 5, 6 years ago to that incident. And that time, she also lost her father. And the way she reacted after that, I cannot explain, or I just don't have words to explain that. And all this thing happened when I was preparing for UPSC. And just before my exam, just one single day before the exam, I was sitting in the park all alone. I continuously sat there for around 9-10 hours without studying, without focusing, without meditating, without relaxing, without having food. I was sitting for 8 to 10 hours in a park all alone, because on that day, operation theater mein, he was getting his treatment. Liver transplant operation was going on there in Delhi. So I was just continuously thinking of that. But finally, we couldn't do anything, and UPSC bhi nahi hua, and we lost my father-in-law. And while all these things were going on in my life, I met with an accident, car accident, and I was with my wife at that time, and I don't know, really I don't know कैसे बच गए. कार खाई में जाके गिर गई थी, ऐसे पलट गई थी and all that. But still we survived somehow. I don't know how, but we did well to recover from that incident as well. एंड लाइक ग्रैंडफादर को खो दिया, फादर इन लॉ को खो दिया, वाइफ का इमोशनल पेन, ऑल दैट, आई हैड टू बी हर सपोर्ट. बट बिफोर बीइंग हर सपोर्ट, I needed to help myself. I needed to recover myself first. In last episode or even before that, I mentioned that if you want to radiate love outside, you have to love yourself first. So I was in that situation. मैं उसकी हेल्प कैसे कर सकता जब तक मैं खुद की हेल्प नहीं कर सकता, राइट? आई वॉज ऑल्सो गोइंग थ्रू ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स. एंड बिफोर माई फादर इन लॉ पास, एक्चुअली आई प्लान सेवरल थिंग्स. माइंड में इतना डिसाइड किया था कि आई विल टॉक टू हिम दिस, मैं उनको ये बोलूँगा, ये शेयर करूँगा, ऐसे करूँगा, वैसे करूँगा, बट आई जस्ट कुडंट स्पीक टू हिम. टाइम ही नहीं मिला. जस्ट आफ्टर 10 days we got to know that about that disease, and after some time he was gone. कभी बात ही नहीं कर पाया, सब रह गया. And just now I mentioned that all these things were happening during the COVID time. At that time, one of my friend, she was also going through a lot of pain. She contacted to me and she shared her experience. She just had got her second miscarriage. और एक लड़की के लिए, एक आफ्टर शादी, लाइक एक बच्चे को ऐसे खोना, और वो भी विद इन स्पैन ऑफ 3 years शी हैड अ सेकेंड मिसकैरेज. कितना ट्रॉमेटिक हो सकता है, आई कैन नॉट इवन एक्सप्लेन दैट. सो शी वॉज asking me for some guidance and help. So I tried my level best to help her without mentioning anything about me. मेरे साथ क्या हो रहा है कुछ नहीं बताया, बस I just tried to help her. At the same time, one of my other friend, she got pregnant. But the issue was she got pregnant before marriage. And she had to go for abortion. And after that, the mental scar or guilt and all that she was going through, similarly, she asked for my help. She asked me to become her support. So I was helping her as well. But while I was going all through of these things, one day I just hit the rock bottom. It was the last thing, I think. It was the saturation point or maximum level of pain which I could bear. I think so. And at that day, I won't explain what was the trigger moment, but at that day, I asked and I thought of committing suicide. But somehow, for some reason, I didn't do that. And at that moment, and from the next day onwards, I decided to take my pain or suffering. I decided to give it a new direction. I decided to take it along with me by accepting it in a new direction, in a positive direction, so that I can heal the world along with me, as I was healing two other girls, two other ladies with myself. And if I include my family members in that, so list बहुत लंबी हो जाती है. We were all helping each other. We were all trying to be support of each other. So in that process, moving out of that, coming out of that trauma, tragic experiences one after the other, and forget about UPS and all that, but काफी कुछ एक साथ. And after that, when I tried to started applying all these things to come back from that thing, that traumatic experience or negativity from my life, to throw that out and to become a strong, positive and love radiating human being, actually, I started to follow a strategy. And the first thing which I did was I focus on my own way. Because मैं खुद ठीक नहीं हूं तो सामने वालों को कैसे ठीक कर दूंगा यार. So it was must for me. I didn't have any other option. It was must. खुद को ठीक करना है तभी दूसरे को ठीक कर पाऊंगा, right? So first thing, I talked to myself and I accepted this thing. हाँ, ये हो गया है, ऐसा हो चुका है, तो now what? Now what? Come on, man. हो गया. Move on. Accept that thing. Acknowledge the event. In last episode, I talked about this thing that at maximum, at most level, we can only manage 99% of the things in our life. 1% हमारे हाथ में नहीं रहेगा. So you can consider it as that 1% in our life. I couldn't control that. So I had to accept that thing. हो गया, ठीक है, acknowledge कर लिया. Now moving on to the second part, second aspect, second step. Accept the support. जहां से भी आपको सपोर्ट मिल सकता है, ले लीजिए. Find that support. Like वो कहते हैं ना, like डूबते को तिनके का सहारा. Find your that तिनका. Find your straw. कोई पर्सन हो सकता है, कोई पर्सन नहीं है. थिंक ऑफ समथिंग एल्स. मेरा सपोर्ट ओनली वन थिंग, जो उस टाइम पर मुझे वापस मिला, जो पहले भी मेरे लाइफ में था, बट ड्यूरिंग ऑल दिस थिंग्स मैं भूल गया था उस चीज को. आफ्टर दैट आई अगेन वेंट बैक टू माई सपोर्ट. I started reading Bhagavad Gita for the 4th or 5th or 6th time, I don't remember exactly, but दोबारा से भगवद गीता पढ़ना स्टार्ट कर दिया. This was the first thing which I did for myself. Second thing, after finding my support, I like finding my support in Bhagavad Gita. Along with that, actually, I also started reading several other books related to mindfulness. And the first book which I read, it was written by an author, like he's from Vietnam, but right now he's living in France, and his name is forgive me for the mispronunciation if I do that, but his name is Thich Nhat Hanh, something like that, Thich. Thich Nhat Hanh. Okay, I read his book on mindfulness, and along with that I read Power of Now by the Mr. Eckhart Tolle, something like that. Okay, I read these two books along with Bhagavad Gita, and slowly and gradually I moved toward that one particular point which I talk of so often, which I talk about, and that thing was self-care, self-love. I started caring for myself, for my emotions. I started to love myself, and along with this, I started to focus on my physical health. I was doing all these things at the same time. Within a span of 1 week or 10 days, मैंने ये सब start कर दिया था. And if I talk about my physical aspect, I just chose one thing. It works for me. If it doesn't work for you, you can think of something else, doing your physical exercise and all that. But I chose to go for a run, to go for a long run, long distance running. It's one of my favorite. So on consistent basis, I started running. Beginning from 3 kilometers, I moved on to the 5 kilometer, 7 kilometer, 10 kilometer, and 12, 15 kilometer. And almost after 8, 10 months, or even I can say like around 1 year, after 1 year or 11 months, I ran half marathon. Yeah, 21 plus kilometers non-stop. I ran that, and I actually finished that non-stop. रुका नहीं. For some time, for few kilometers, I can say that speed बहुत कम हो गया था, and actually I was jogging or walking, you can say, but I didn't stop. Right. So while focusing on the physical aspect and reading habit, I was also focusing on my mind. I was practicing and learning mindfulness along with meditation. I started to do meditation twice a day, morning and at the night before going to bed. And during the day, I try to apply mindfulness. जब भी possible होता, I try to do that. And one thing which I want to mention, the next step is try to focus on all those things which you used to love before that traumatic experience or event happened in your life. वो जो भी ट्रेजेडी आपके साथ हुई, उससे पहले जो भी आप करते थे, जो भी फन लविंग थिंग्स थी, द थिंग्स विच यू यूज टू लव एक्चुअली, उन्हें वापस अपनी लाइफ में लेके आइए. फोकस ऑन दैट पार्ट एज वेल एंड start doing that on regular basis, consistent basis. For me, that was writing poetry. Almost after 1.5 years, I started writing poetry again for myself. It helped me, it worked. And slowly and gradually, all these things helped me to get back to my routine. So it's also one of the crucial points. Get back to your routine as soon as possible. Actually, in our society, one thing is there, like कितना टाइम लगता है रिकवर होने में. I don't know if you have seen that serial named Friends, US based television show. काफी पुराना है वैसे. I hope so आपने सुना होगा, देखा होगा. One character was there in that particular show, Joy. And in one particular scene, the three lady characters of that show were talking to each other, and one of them, sorry, and one of them just had got divorced, and she was talking to other two friends, and she was asking like, divorce के बाद कितना टाइम लगता है रिकवर होने में? How much time do I need to recover after divorce? The mental trauma which I am going through, how much time do I need to recover from that, overcome that? And one of that friend replied that at least you need 2 months. The other one said, no, actually it should be near about 6 months. And then they all three turned around to Joy. He's one of my favorite character in that show. And they all turned around to Joy and they asked him the same question. And he just said, half an hour. सिर्फ आधा घंटा चाहिए रिकवर होने के लिए, ओवरकम करने के लिए. एक्चुअली इट्स नॉट ए फनी थिंग, बट द पॉइंट इज हमारी सोसाइटी ने ऐसा बना दिया है. हमें लगता है कि कुछ लॉस हुआ है, कुछ ट्रेजिक हुआ है, तो हमारा कॉन्शियस लेवल ऐसा बना दिया कि जब तक हम मौन नहीं करेंगे, उसी चीज में ज्यादा टाइम तक रहेंगे नहीं, दुखी नहीं रहेंगे, उसको फील नहीं करेंगे, बार बार उसे रिप्ले नहीं करेंगे अपने माइंड में, हम रिकवर होने का मतलब चांस नहीं है, हम रिकवर नहीं हो सकते. व्हाई इज दैट थिंग? व्हाई? ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए ना. इट्स अप टू यू, इट्स अप टू योर कॉन्शियस लेवल, मेंटल लेवल, इट्स अप टू योर एफर्ट्स. जितना जल्दी आप चाहें रिकवर कर सकते हैं, और रिकवर आपको खुद ही करना है. बिफोर यू मूव इनटू डिप्रेशन एंड थिंक ऑफ कमिटिंग सुसाइड एंड ऑल दैट, हेल्प योरसेल्फ. जरूरी नहीं है आपको 6 महीने 1 साल ही लगाना है. यू कैन डू इट इन हाफ एन आवर और 1 वीक, 1 डे, 1 मंथ. सोचिए. आई अप्लाइड दैट. इतना नेगेटिव सब कुछ था, बट overall it just took me around 20-25 days at max to reach my early routine and all those things, at the same time helping other as well. And at last I just want to add one thing, that while doing all these things, do not rush. Just now I have mentioned that you can do it in half an hour, बट इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी. डू नॉट रश. अगर आप अभी उस मेंटल लेवल पर नहीं है, डू नॉट ट्राई टू रश इट. द थिंग इज दैट आपको पूरा एक्सेप्ट करना है उसको, सेल्फ केयर, सेल्फ लव करना है. ट्रेजिक इंसिडेंट जो हुआ है उसको एक्सेप्ट करना है, सेल्फ लव केयर करना है, माइंडफुलनेस, मेडिटेशन, फिजिकल एस्पेक्ट पर काम करते हुए आगे बढ़ना है. और धीरे धीरे ही सही, slowly and gradually you have to move out of this. For someone it may take 1 week, for some other person he might need 2 or 3 months. It's fine. Do not rush the process, just take your time. Okay, so that was it from my side today. Sorry for a little bit of additional emotions in this episode. It was just needed to explain that, or why I am explaining all these things to you. Just because मैंने खुद फेस किया है, और अपने आसपास के लोगों के साथ वी हैव रिकवर्ड एंड हेल्प ईच अदर टू रिकवर और कम आउट ऑफ दैट सिचुएशन. सो हमने ये सब किया, आप भी करिए, एंड आई होप आपको कुछ हेल्प मिलेगी. यू विल बी इन ए हैप्पी स्टेट while doing all these things. And if you have any suggestion, please share with me. If you have any other valid point which can be done or applied by some other person in this kind of situation, please share it with me. Okay, so thank you. Thank you once again for joining me on this episode of Being the Change. See you soon. See you in the next episode. Take care. Thank you. Thank you.